Welcome to the Character Sheet, ComicBook.com's official home for all things tabletop and fantasy. I'm Christian Hoffer, and today I am joined by producer Pete, and we are here with a very special episode. It's about the year end, there's not a lot of news, so we figured it would be a good time just to go and talk about our favorite things of the year. That's right, we're going to run down the Character Sheet's best ofs for 2023.
Yes, it'll be each of us picking a few favorites in every category and sort of trying to agree on which one is the best. And I am holding a small dog for most of this because it's holiday season, packages are arriving, and there will be constant barking if I am not. So let's kick it off. Let's start with the last one we added. Let's start with our favorite fantasy show of 2023. Christian?
Yeah. Well, there aren't... weirdly enough, there weren't too many fantasy shows that came out this year, because of the whole writer's strike thing. Well, last year we had House of the Dragon and Lord of the Rings, which kind of dominated the end part of the year. We didn't really have any of that this year. We did have The Wheel of Time, which was certainly an improvement over season one.
This is true.
We had let's see what else we had. We had Castlevania Nocturne. That was another good fantasy series. Albeit one based off of Castlevania. Another one actually that we haven't really touched on here on the character sheet is Frieren Beyond Journey's End, which is an amazing anime that's based on one of the best fantasy manga that's come out in the last 15 or so years.
That's true. That's a good one.
There's a few, and go ahead, Pete.
So the two jumped out to me, and I forgot about Frieren, which is actually a really good show. One's a very new one. We just recently started covering because it just came out, but it's much better than I was anticipating. Is Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't a guy grew up right in between the peaks of like both Harry Potter and then but I was slightly too old for Percy Jackson when it hit, really. So having not seen it before and then finally getting a chance to see it now, I'm like, oh, this is a so far much better version of like YA fantasies than I was ever expecting it to be. And the other thing that also shocked me, speaking of anime like Frieren, was One Piece. I was shocked by how good One Piece was.
No,
I went in with zero expectations on One Piece and was just blown away by how they just kind of came in and just full committed. Like, I was not expecting them to just go that hard, have it be a non-Japanese production, an international production, just full commit to the whole anime conceit, and it worked, and it was crazy.
Yeah, the interesting thing with One Piece is, and I'm a huge One Piece fan. My dog is named Luffy, for context. The interesting thing about the interesting thing about One Piece is that there are some very subtle changes from the source material. Obviously, the source material for One Piece is it's extensive. And when you only have 8 episodes or 10 episodes or however many you have, you're going to have to condense things down. And they made some pretty subtle changes. I think honestly the biggest change that they made in that show is that Luffy's defining characteristic, to personality, is fundamentally different. Not in a a lot of people wouldn't notice it, but it's very distinct. Luffy in the manga and the anime series is a pirate. He happens to, his big thing is, he's a big believer in the power of friendship and stuff like that. And, usually a lot of his adventures and him rising up against the world government is because he hates the idea. He thinks everyone should be free. And, the folks who get wronged usually happen to be his friend. And that's why he takes action. He's not necessarily a good person. He is a good person, but a lot of his good actions are almost by it's more like he likes good people than he himself.
That he wants to do good. Yeah. Is that your what's your pick in the category then? What are you putting forward?
Honestly, I changed my mind at the last minute. I'm gonna go with Frieren. Like I said, I absolutely love that manga, and the anime has done a really good job of that.
That's fair. I would agree with that. I had forgotten about it, but yeah, if you are in any way a fan of anime or just kind of animation in general, check out Frieren because it's a great. The very super quick plot line is elf wizard from the party that vanquished the demon lord, 100+ years ago, is one of the only living members still of that party and is now going back out in the world to try and figure out what life means. Like, she's sort of had a whole life without friends and adventures since then, and it's kind of been empty. And she's sort of trying to recapture that magic she had when she was part of the hero's party. It's a really interesting twist on the whole hero defeats demon lord conceit you see everywhere. So give
Yeah,
that one a try.
it's really about examining your relationships with loved ones after they've passed away.
Yes, yeah, the main because like I said, there's 2 people in the hero's party that are still alive, and the rest are all passed on at this point. But let's
So,
jump now. That was a kind of a long one. Let's jump into a couple quick ones.
yeah,
Here's a pretty quick one. Best D&D release of 2023 and why it's Planescape box set.
yeah, it's Planescape. So there were only a handful of releases this year. I think that of the releases, there's only 2 that could really be called genuinely good this year. And that's Planescape and Fandelver. The issue with Fandelver, I think, and why I don't think it's as good as Planescape is that Fandelver really is a tale of 2 adventures. The coherency that they did between Act 1, which is the Fandelver that we all know, the Lost Mines of Fandelver, and the Shattered Obelisk part, which is part 2. They're not very they didn't do a good job of making that coherent switch. It very much feels disjointed, and you have to do a lot of work to make that one flowing adventure. Planescape, on the other hand, while it's not a perfect Planescape adaptation, it's really all about Sigil and the Outlands. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I would have liked to see some more stuff with the factions in there.
Yeah.
I kind of hate they trimmed a few of them out, and it's not really doesn't get into the nitty gritty. But honestly, I mean, in a year of relative, and as a Dragonlance fan, like even I can't really defend that Dragonlance box that well. But I mean, this is kind of a, weren't really spoiled for choice in this category, and I think the winner has to be the Planescape box set.
Yeah.
But speaking of a place where we had a lot of great choices, but still might be a quick category. What about the best D&D third-party release of the year?
Oh, well, there's obviously, this category is interesting in that, the third party space has, obviously been expanding a lot, but this year there was a little bit of a constriction because
OGL made everyone look everywhere.
A lot of projects that would be coming out this year were either abandoned or revised because of the OGL stuff that happened at the start of the year. So there weren't as many. There were still plenty of like good, releases this year. But the one that really stood out is Flea Mortals.
Yes.
That is honestly, the MCDM team has done a very good job of taking the tactics encouraged by 4E and kind of marrying them to 5E in a way that a lot of people didn't think possible. MCDM, has always had a pretty coherent and coherent design strategy. All their stuff really plays on each other, and Flea Mortals really feels like the culmination of what they started with strongholds and followers, and continued on. What was it with kingdoms? I forget what the second one.
Kingdoms and stronghold. They stronghold the followers. They had kingdom warfare. They also had the talent come out this year, which was another almost made my list as well.
They've been coming out with the they've been coming out with those subclass PDFs. Or not subclass, class PDFs. I think that's the third one they've come out with. So but it's all kind of come together with Flea Mortals, and that's a good capstone for their 5e stuff. They're moving on to the MCDM RPG, but Flea Mortals really feels like they hit the peak, and there's probably not much more that they can do from there.
Yeah, and some quick shout outs as my dog yells at another package delivery. Just out on D&D Beyond very recently, the Dungeons of Drakkenheim. We talked to the Dungeon Dudes about. That's a fantastic sort of D&D take on cosmic horror, but it's also it's great value. Like there's something like there's almost 50 new magic items. There's um, as many new monsters. There's lots of like new content in that, which you don't always get with like a third party drop. But it's if you have D&D Beyond, that's probably the other big third party release to check out. But yeah, there's been a lot, and it's just MCDM's kind of dominated that space this year because they've just been on an incredible hot streak. But
Yeah.
so I think Flea Mortals, one of the best 5e third party books possibly ever. So definitely worth our pick for this year. Let's go outside the world of D&D. Let's just talk about what was the best TTRPG of 2023, and let's start with your picks.
So I kind of limited mine to games that came out this year. It's always funny because there's stuff that like Avatar Legends is one that technically was released this year, but if you back that Kickstarter, you got the PDF last year. And so I didn't even like think of that one because I read it over a year ago. So I kind of limited it to only stuff that I've looked at this year. And so the three that really stand out to me, Dragonbane, obviously, Warhammer 40k Imperium Maledictum, which is an amazing Warhammer 40k role-playing game that really explores a space that the Warhammer 40k novels do really well, but not necessarily the 40k games itself. And I think it really explores a one of the more fascinating parts of that world, in my opinion. And obviously, Old Gods of Appalachia, which is based off of one of my favorite podcasts of all time, and it's a fantastic horror podcast turned into a fantastic horror RPG.
Yeah, I also on my list I also have Imperium Maledictum because I'm a huge 40k fan, and it's a marked step up from Dark Heresy in terms of what you can do and exploring the environment. But and the other ones I really like the Pathfinder 2e remaster that came out. I'm a big fan of that streamlining. And I enjoyed Tales of the Valiant more than I think. I'm on the side of people that it's very divisive. It is you kind of either you love it or you hate it. I'm on the love it side for sure. But I think as one of the only overlaps, it seems like maybe the dark horse winner is Imperium Maledictum.
Yeah, I would, I personally wouldn't say that it is my number one game of the year, but it's definitely in my top three, and I think it's the only one that falls in both of our top threes. So yeah, we'll give it to them. Why not?
Yeah, and if you like 40k and you like role playing, it is the best version of that they've had in quite some time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That's very true.
Right. And before we get into the divisive actual play stuff, we got one more, and that is the best RPG video game of the year, with the caveat that almost certainly we're going to say a lot of words, and at the end of that, the answer is going to be Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3, there's two real big, RPG video games. And one of them I always forget, like, that Legend of Zelda technically is an RPG. I don't really think of it as
I put it in there and I sort of like, man, I could be talked out of that being an RPG. It's really kind of like an action RPG.
Yeah, it's like an action RPG. So, I could make the case that Zelda, if we want to count Zelda as an RPG, that would be one, and Baldur's Gate would be my 1A. But this was a really good year for RPGs. Sea of Stars, absolutely amazing RPG that would have
beautiful nostalgia games. Yeah, like huge Chrono Trigger vibes.
Just absolutely fantastic. So there was that. I'm trying to think of some of the other.
Final Fantasy 16 was a good one.
Oh yeah, I forgot there was a Final Fantasy game,
and it was a good Final Fantasy game, and it didn't make my list, which is crazy. Octopath Traveler 2. I love Octopath Traveler.
Absolutely amazing game. Octopath Traveler 2.
Speaking of beautiful games with retro vibes.
Yeah, Octopath Traveler 2. Honestly, one of my favorite games of the year. So it's just been a great year for RPG video games, and we're not even talking about some of the stuff that's recently come out. Rogue Trader.
From Owlcat. Fantastic game.
That game will, the problem with Owlcat games are they take a little bit of time to get all the bugs out, and they're still in that bug clearing out process. I would recommend waiting like maybe 3 or 4 months before you play that game. Let them figure out, where all the bugs are, and But that is a very fun to play game. It's just like I said, the bugs are still present as they usually are with those early
Yeah.
builds.
If you look at people's Steam libraries in about 6 months, you'll probably see that the most played game is Baldur's Gate 3, but then probably sneaking in behind it for most hours played is going to be something like Rogue Trader, because you can just, there's so much replayability.
Yeah.
And with those sort of like tactical RPGs, you can spend so much time in them. And it's a really good game, but I think this year, nothing was going to top the juggernaut that is Baldur's Gate 3. But
And I will also say that, since this is a year-end recap, we were definitely wrong about the impact of Baldur's Gate 3.
oh yeah, we did not think that it was going. We knew it was going to be an amazing game because we
Yeah,
played it, but we didn't think it was going to just single-handedly lift the fortunes of Wizards of the Coast the way it did.
and
Although apparently for Hasbro, still not enough to avoid slashing a huge chunk of their workforce. But
that's that's neither here or there for this one. But yeah, no, Baldur's Gate 3 definitely one of the biggest tabletop RPG stories, and wasn't even a tabletop RPG.
Let's start with the most with some recency bias here, and let's talk about the best new actual plays of 2023, the ones that came out this year.
Well, and that kind of makes things a little bit interesting. I went with Dimension 20 Burrow's End. I thought that was it's just wrapped up, very good. Everything Abria does is amazing. I thought the Dimension 20 team brought together a really cool cast for that one, and they told a very interesting story, a type of story that I personally love. We've talked about here before. I love me my anthropomorphic animals.
Yeah, this is right up the Redwall alley.
Yeah, it very much touched on those like Redwall, Secret of Nim vibes. And that's really just my jam. So that was one. Another one that I'm going to call out is Bookshops of Arkham, which
a great one.
Yeah, that one was a really cool. How they did that was really cool. It was a really neat collaboration with Roll20, and I thought they did everything really interesting there.
And I will say, I had sort of moved. I kept all my Dimension 20 stuff to the next category because it's weird. It's definitely a new actual play, even though it's a continuation of the Dimension 20 universe. And I chose to interpret this as just like brand new everything. So in that case, I just continuously get packages, and my dog just continuously hates it. There's two that really jumped out at me. One, we did a lot of interviews with the DM of, that was Sword AF. Sword AF kind of came out of nowhere from Smosh Games. Damian Haas turned out to be a phenomenal DM. You could really see them get their footing as every episode went along, and it just got like tighter and tighter and better and funnier. And it's also interesting to kind of see people newer to the game kind of embrace the game and like get their mechanics down as the thing goes along. So you kind of got to see how the sausage was made a little bit while still being like a nice, well polished, like high end production. And it was just a cool storyline. I loved the storyline a lot. And then the other one that really jumped out to me, and is I think my pick for the one of the year, had to be Worlds Beyond Number, specifically their whole of the Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. Like that might be my favorite audio actual play of all time. The audio quality is phenomenal. The team there of Brennan Lee Mulligan and Abria and Lou and Erica Ishii are just phenomenal. And the story is great. The story it zigs when you think it's going to zag. You can never predict anything, but it's not like, they're not Shyamalan-ing you all the time. It's inventive and creative and beautiful in a way that I hadn't seen in a long time. And it reminds me of like some of the best of Dimension 20, some of the best of stuff like atmospheric things like Bookshops of Arkham. It's like there's a whole mood to it that's impressive to me. And that's why I think it's my pick for new actual play of 2023.
We've moved on to actual plays, being very much a video thing. And it really kind of demonstrates that not only, our podcast still relevant to this, growing type of entertainment. But it can still be done really well. And I also liked the fact that it was a really small, focused cast. You know, actual plays tend to get like bigger and bigger in terms of their cast size. Like, you know, you see more casts going for like a Critical Role sort of thing where there's 7 or 8 people.
Yeah, and this is
And
just 3 players and a DM, and
yeah.
it shows you that there's a difference to that where it's the pace is different, the flow is different because you're not worrying about bouncing back and forth between 8
Mhm.
POVs all the time or making sure player number 1 of 7 gets their spotlight this moment, and it leads to a tightly knit story, but in a very tightly knit party in a way that's a lot like, and we'll talk about this in a different video, but like one of the issues with campaign 3 of Critical Role is it doesn't really feel like that party is cohesive or gelled, and there's just so many of them. It's
Mhm.
very hard to weave all those stories together in a way that makes sense versus 3 people, and you're seeing that a lot on Worlds Beyond Number. But now for the big one, the final one. Let's wrap it up with the best actual plays of 2023. I'll kick this one off, and I will say, because I think we might have some overlap on some of them, I am putting Worlds Beyond Number in this category as well because I love them that much. But we've just talked a lot about them. My other one, and is I think easily my favorite video one, although Burrow's End was very close, and that is Dimension 20's The Ravening War. The Ravening War is so good. The acting job that you get to see Abria and Brennan do as characters outside of their DM roles is amazing. Getting to see the delight that is like people getting introduced to like Zach Oyama for the first
Mhm.
time that might not be, Intrepid Heroes fans. Like his character, Colin Provolone, is so good in that. And also phenomenal set design by Rick Perry again, as should surprise no one. Just the Dimension 20 set designer and prop master is phenomenal, and it's just so good. And the story is amazing. And seeing Matt Mercer getting to do to Brennan what Brennan did to him with Exandria Unlimited is a delight.
There's a lot of like cool there's a lot of like really interesting actual plays that came out this year. Like and the thing is there's so many of them. We're going to leave out a lot of great ones no matter what we talk about. Like Worlds Beyond Number I think was fantastic. I think that, we barely talk about the Adventure Zone on the character sheet,
I
but
almost mentioned him. Steeplechase, for whatever
yeah.
reason, I didn't get drawn into the characters as much. My other shout out was that I spaced on for new ones was going to be Desi Quest.
Yeah,
I
Desi's Quest.
love the set
Yep.
design of Desi Quest. The only caveat to that is it's so authentic to that Southeast Asian culture, and it's so
Mhm.
like the culture is such a part of that story that as a Westerner, you might have to like sit there for an episode 2 and like they do a good job of explaining what they're doing and giving you like little, basically like this is what this means for people outside this culture, and that's awesome. And it takes you like maybe an episode or 2 to get into it because it's just so rich with this very specific culture of the Southeast Asian culture, and it's done so well. But it might take you an episode or 2 to get into, but it's totally worth the time to do so because it's great.
Yeah, and Counterparty is another one that we've barely talked about.
And Counterparty, I love the series so far. I wish it was on a better distribution platform. Like Freebie and Plex is not the answer for them going forward, and hopefully they will find a more expansive, better home as they go because the show deserves it. It's a very good show.
Yeah, so I think like I said, there are so many great actual play shows. I can't pick just one. I'm copping down on this one, but there are a lot of great actual plays that came out this year. I really think that the medium as a whole really took a step forward this year.
Yeah, I will just say, we won't pick one for this because, like I said, there are. I think Ravening War is my favorite, but I will just say that this might be, while some people are saying this is sort of a down year for Critical Role in terms of the campaign, I would say the reverse is true for Dimension 20, who might have had a year of all bangers
Mm-hmm.
that we like. The Dungeons and Drag Queens, the Mintopolis was phenomenal. So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about holy shit set design, my
Yeah.
God, and just such a unique take on that system. And then you start with the Ravening War, you end with Burrow's End. It's just like hit after hit after hit after hit, and it's normally there's at least one Dimension 20 a year that like fans or at least I personally am like, oh, like I could kind of take it or leave it, and that's not true this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Dimension 20 had a very good 2023, and 2024 is probably going to be even bigger because they have Fantasy High coming out.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, our answer is some Dimension 20 show probably. And I'll let you wind us down as our 2023 picks for best fantasy TTRPG stuff of the year is kind
well,
of wrapped up.
we have, I think it would be really easy to say. I think the best way to end this is, thanking everybody who has watched our channel over the past year. We have grown at an astounding rate. We have picked up nearly 25,000 subscribers in
Yeah.
2023. We've had a huge year. And so, I think the best way of ending this is by thanking you, the viewers. This has been a really great year for us. We're hoping that 2024 will be even bigger. We want to do a lot more, on the character sheet. And, we've been really impressed by the fact that, the start, we started this off and we figured, okay, we're probably going to have to focus on Dungeons and Dragons and, Critical Role. And we do a lot of that. We do. But we've been really happy with the fact that we can cover other types of RPGs, and we want to keep that going. And we can only do that because, you folks are keep tuning in and watching our videos. So thank you very much. We can't do this without you. We really appreciate all the trust you place in us to deliver the tabletop news of the week and, cover different tabletop stories and do deep dives and interviews and all that stuff. And we hope to keep doing that for many years to come. But thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a huge thank you from Christian and I. We can't do it without you. We've got some crazy good stuff coming to start the new year. I don't want to spoil that just yet, but you'll want to watch in January for sure. And I guess until then, happy holidays to all those celebrating whatever you're celebrating. And we will see you back here on the character sheet for another video tomorrow.